Okay, let's dive right in. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating explainer based on a presentation from the Hassine Center. It lays out a detailed theological argument, specifically 8 distinct proofs arguing for the divine origin of the Quran. Now, whether you're a major theology buff or you're just kind of curious about how ancient texts are analyzed and defended today, you're in the right place. We are going to break down the mechanics of this argument step by step. To make this easy to follow, we're organizing these 8 proofs into 5 core pillars. First, a living, eternal miracle. Second, linguistic and literary perfection. Third, knowledge beyond human reach. Fourth, perfect preservation and consistency. And finally, transforming the human soul. Let's kick things off with part 1, a living, eternal miracle, where we'll explore the core premise of this whole argument. So before jumping into the specific proofs, the source establishes a pretty crucial baseline. Like, how do we even define the word miracle in this context? Think about historical miracles you probably heard of, right? Parting a sea, healing the sick. The source points out a major limitation there. Those events were only witnessed by the people standing right there at that exact moment. For the rest of us, it's literally just a historical report. But a textual miracle? Well, that completely changes the game. It creates what the presentation calls a living miracle. It's a claim that every single generation, including us right now, can hold in their hands, analyze, and test firsthand. Moving right along to part 2, linguistic and literary perfection. Here we're going to cover proofs 1, 2, and 8. The first major proof claims that this text essentially breaks all known literary rules. The argument is that it's not standard poetry and it's not standard prose either. It supposedly exists in a linguistic category entirely of its own. Imagine, if you will, an architectural masterpiece, where pulling out just a single tiny brick causes the entire structure to warp. That's exactly how the text's eloquence is described here. The claim is that altering or removing even one single letter actively diminishes its perfection. So it's presented to us not just as good writing, but as this highly mathematical, linguistically precise construct. And to really back up this claim of absolute precision, the source looks at the text's unique economy of words, which brings us to the second proof. Take a massive concept like paradise. How in the world do you accurately describe an infinite, perfect heaven? Well, instead of listing endless, exhaustive rewards, the text uses this incredibly brief sentence, and therein is whatever the soul's desire and wherein the eyes find pleasure. The argument here is that this one short line manages to capture absolutely every possible human desire. It encapsulates an infinite scope with astonishing conciseness, which is a feat the source considers entirely superhuman. This leads us right into a really dramatic historical challenge, which is proof number 8. The text essentially threw down the gauntlet to all of humanity, challenging them to produce just a single chapter that matches its style and eloquence. Now, context is super key here. 7th century Arabia was a society completely obsessed with poetry and language. The staunchest opponents of this text were absolute masters of Arabic, and they desperately wanted to discredit it. Yet, according to the historical narrative, they completely failed to replicate it. So the inability of those contemporaries to rise to this challenge is held up as definitive proof of its non-human origin. Okay, let's shift gears to part 3, knowledge beyond human reach, covering proofs 3 and 5. Here, the argument shifts to the natural world. The question posed is, how could someone in 7th century Arabia possess highly specific scientific foresight without divine insight? The presentation leans on 2 incredibly specific examples. First, the text outlines distinct stages of human development in the womb, stages the source notes align perfectly with what modern microscopes and embryology only recently proved. Second, it describes deep-sea waves occurring beneath the ocean's surface in total pitch-black darkness. And that is a phenomenon modern oceanographers only confirmed much, much later with the invention of advanced submarines. But hey, it isn't just about natural science, it's also about geopolitics. The third proof focuses on historical foresight. The source highlights a specific instance where the text accurately predicted the shifting power dynamics between 2 massive global superpowers, foretelling the future defeat of the Romans against the Persian army. The argument being made is that the specificity and the exact timing of this prediction operate far, far outside the bounds of lucky human guesswork or political intuition. That brings us to part 4, perfect preservation and consistency, where we'll unpack proofs 4 and 6. Think for a second about how incredibly hard it is to write a consistent book in a quiet room over, say, a single year. Now stretch that process out over 2 decades. The narrator emphasizes a very crucial detail. This text wasn't written all at once. It was revealed piecemeal over 23 years. And those years were incredibly turbulent. We're talking about bouncing between extreme poverty and leadership, devastating warfare and total peace, just facing constant, wildly varying circumstances. And yet, despite 23 years of chaotic, shifting realities, we arrive at the sixth proof: zero internal contradictions. The text itself actually challenges the reader on this point. It essentially states that if it had come from any human mind enduring those wildly different phases of life, it would inevitably be full of contradictions, changing tones, and shifting ideologies. But the source claims there are absolutely none. Tying right into that structural integrity is the claim of absolute preservation, serving as the fourth proof. Throughout history, countless religious and historical texts have been fragmented, lost, or heavily edited. But this text claims divine guardianship, promising it will remain completely unchanged. And the source points out a fascinating dual preservation method. It hasn't just survived in written form. It has survived through an unbroken chain of oral tradition, memorized literally word for word in the hearts of millions of people across centuries. Finally, we reach part 5, transforming the human soul. This covers proof 7 and our conclusion. For this final argument, we pivot from intellectual and historical evidence to something deeply personal. Think about your favorite book for a minute. You read it a few times, and eventually you've extracted all its value, right? The words start to grow just a little stale. Well, the seventh proof argues this text is fundamentally different. It claims a unique psychological effect where continual readings never get old. It's said to constantly reveal fresh insights and touch the human heart in a way standard literature simply cannot replicate. And this isn't just presented as a mental exercise. It's described as a visceral, physical reaction. The text speaks of skins shivering before eventually relaxing into a state of deep peace. The source positions this profound, tangible emotional response, an actual physical reaction to simply hearing or reading these words, as yet another key indicator of a non-human origin. Bringing it all together, the source offers a pretty powerful caveat. You can intellectually recognize all the previous proofs, the linguistics, the historical foresight, the science, but that isn't actually the goal. The speaker argues that the doors to understanding this text only truly open if you approach it with sincerity, actively seeking guidance. The ultimate miracle, they argue, isn't found in a laboratory or a history book. It's found in allowing the text to act as the spring of your heart, fundamentally transforming the way you live. As we wrap up, this deep dive leaves us with a really fascinating dual perspective on what exactly constitutes a miracle. We've looked at a meticulously structured argument that bridges empirical claims with deeply subjective spiritual experiences. It kind of forces us to ask a compelling question. Is the ultimate proof of a sacred text found in its measurable historical and linguistic perfection? Or is it actually proven by its enduring, timeless ability to permanently transform the human heart? Definitely something to think about.